Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。This week, just one day after US Secretary of State Blinken wrapped up his two-day crisis visit to Beijing, Joe Biden called China's president a dictator. The day after that, reporters in New Zealand asked Prime Minister Hipkins if he agreed. His reasoned answer made me proud to be a New Zealander and shocked the Western world. It also set US warhawks into a Category 5 frenzy, with some calling for sanctions and suggesting Hipkins no longer deserves to lead. Today, we'll investigate. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Boreham in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. You guys, I have to say I'm really excited and pleasantly surprised by how New Zealand Prime Minister Chris Hipkins responded to reporters' questions this week about whether or not President Xi Jinping is a dictator. It's one of these rare days when I feel proud to be a Kiwi. Before he said that, Hipkins' stance on China was more or less a bit of a mystery, and no real clues came from his past. But before I get too carried away, let's take a quick look at his response.
Do you agree with US President Joe Biden's assessment that Xi Jinping is a dictator?
No, and the form of government that China has is a matter for the Chinese people.
In the House yesterday during... Do they have a say?
If they wanted to change their system of government, then that would be a matter for them.
How would they do that?
Well, that would be a matter for them.
Wow, such a breath of fresh air. For once, a Western leader is treating the Chinese people with the respect they deserve, treating them as real people with agency, which is exactly what they are. Hipkins is exactly right. What happens in China is a matter for the Chinese people, who are more than capable of holding their own leaders to account, and who, I might add, are largely very happy with the governance of their country and the gains it has made. I don't need to mention just how much the lives of ordinary Chinese people have improved over the past few decades, since reform and opening up began in the late 1970s. Chinese people's satisfaction with their government rose from 86 to 93% between 2003 and 2016 alone, and that's from a poll undertaken by Harvard University. But I do want to just play that clip again really quickly, and I want you guys to listen closely to the reporter's voice.
Do you agree with US President Joe Biden's assessment that Xi Jinping is a dictator?
No, and the form of government that China has is a matter for the Chinese people.
In the House yesterday during... Do they have a say?
If they wanted to change their system of government, then that would be a matter for them.
How would they do that?
Well, that would be a matter for them.
Did you pick it up? It might be a bit difficult if you're not from down under, but the reporter is clearly an Australian. Take from that what you will. What annoyed me most was the condescending tone in his voice. And it's the same tone many Westerners use when talking of China and Chinese people, who they see as feeble victims. When Prime Minister Hipkins says that the government in China is a matter for the Chinese people, the cocky reporter replies, "Is it? Do they have a say?" Now, this is a common angle, the belief that just because China is not a liberal democracy where the people vote directly for their leader, that Chinese people have absolutely no say at all in their governance and their lives. With all due respect, that is just complete codswallop. If you want more information on China's whole process democracy, where I outline China's democratic system in detail, check out my video on that topic. I'll put the link in the description below. Now, it's basically like this. The Chinese people don't need white saviors to come along on a white horse and save them. They're doing extremely well without your interference. In fact, they're arguably doing much better than the collective West in many ways. As just one example, China's annual inflation rate fell to 0.1% in April 2023, while Australians are currently suffering under 7% inflation. And the UK's annual rate sits at 8.7%. So is Xi Jinping a dictator? Well, the obvious answer is no. Again, Westerners are suffering under their simplistic black and white version of the world. For them, a dictatorship is any political system where leaders are not chosen through universal voting on a regular basis. President Xi is absolutely answerable to the people of China, and he constantly needs to ensure that all of his decisions and actions are designed for the benefit of the people at large. Now, it's important to remember that the term democracy in the West basically means the right to vote, and they view any country without universal voting as undemocratic or dictatorships. For them, it is simply that black and white. But the actual meaning of democracy is rule by the people for the people. The slogan of the Communist Party of China is 为人民服务, serve the people. It is literally at the core of the party. I found one hilarious opinion piece on theconversation.com which argued, sorry, Prime Minister, Joe Biden was right. Xi Jinping really is a dictator. Their justification? A misinterpretation of China's constitution, which mentions the people's dictatorship. They say, the CCP constitution states that the party must not just uphold the people's democratic dictatorship, but oppose bourgeois liberalization. Now, unfortunately, despite the answer being right before their eyes, the author of this piece clearly doesn't understand what they are reading at all. It mentions that the new China is a people's dictatorship, which basically means that the people of China decide how the country is run. Article 2 of the Constitution puts it simply, all power in the People's Republic of China belongs to the people. That is what a people's dictatorship is, and it has nothing to do with one person being a dictator by any means. So thank you, The Conversation, for highlighting just how little you know. Now, before I mentioned how US lackeys had been sent into a Category 5 frenzy over New Zealand standing up and acting reasonably, let's take a quick look at some of the reactions on Twitter. This guy, Anders Kaur, who is meant to be a PhD somehow, believes the US should sanction New Zealand, one of its closest allies, because Hipkins doesn't think President Xi Jinping is a dictator, he tweeted. The US and EU can always impose economic sanctions on countries that lie about China's dictatorship. If New Zealand wants to go that route, that's your choice and ours. LOL. Now that's after suggesting earlier that Hipkins should be deposed. New Zealand's PM is flagrantly lying about the China threat and therefore unfit to lead. The thing I find quite interesting here is that the powers that be expect everyone to think and act exactly the same way. But that idea is, ironically, extremely non-democratic. Funny that. So what do you think? Is Chris Hipkins a breath of fresh air? Did Joe Biden step out of line? And can there be more than one type of democracy? As always, I'd love to know what you guys think, and I do read many of your comments. Also, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.